Which screen are we? Whichever one comes up.
Yeah.
Step up.
So yeah, step up. You're gonna make me look smaller the closer you get.
Hey, there we are.
What's happening, y'all? We are here on Fish Talk Live pregame show. We are gonna kind of expedite this show just a little bit. We have a lot to introduce to y'all. Kind of a big evening tonight.
A lot of good stuff.
Very much so. Something you're really going to want to pay attention to for our laws and regulations that have just changed. So what we're going to do, we're going to just kind of change things up a little bit. Mario, so how's fishing this week?
Fishing's pretty good. Just like a normal early fall pattern. We're getting them on the outside islands, of course. Following mullet, cut bait, pinfish, shrimp. It's all working. It's
nice.
Quite easy, yeah.
I've even heard a couple of the captains talking about some triple tail moving in.
They're starting to. I haven't been able to make it very far out because of the windy weather we've had. So
a little gusty out there.
Yeah, we've been stayed tucked in.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way on the airboat. I've been playing a lot in the backwaters, and I'm still finding fish back there, which is nice.
Yeah,
even throughout the whole summer, we have still found fish back in those dark waters, which big majorities have moved to the outside, but the quality ones are on the inside too.
We'll have some trout moving in pretty soon too.
Yeah, I'm very excited for some trout to move in. So we have a couple of special guests coming in tonight. Looking mighty forward to this. I know a lot of y'all have some questions for them, and it's going to be pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, how long do we want to stick with this? We're going to get this. There it is.
Yeah. Look at that.
Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so that was not your typical pregame show, very obviously. We've got a big night lined up. We've got Captain Dylan Hubbard that's going to be weighing in as one of those people that is knowledgeable, self-educated, and he networks with everyone when it comes to the different committees, the different groups, the NOAAs, the FWCs. He stays in the in. So Captain Dylan Hubbard is going to give us his thoughts, and he's going to be weighing in on the early closure of the already early grouper season. We also have a very special guest from NOAA Fisheries that's going to be on the casting couch with Capt Marrio here in a little bit, where we have a plethora of questions for him. So this is going to be your typical episode. We want to get all the facts out there. We want to get all your questions answered. We want to get our questions answered. And we want NOAA to have the chance to explain to us why this is closing early. And we're thankful for the opportunity. So we are going to cruise through one of our favorite segments, the Extreme Decalz Catch of the Week, right after the intro. We'll be right back.
Beyond the woods, down the twists and the turns, through the marsh lies the knowledge needed to fish the nature coast.
Fish Talk Live. What's happening, y'all? Here with the Extreme Decalz Catch of the Week, and we have quite a few different ones to play with here. Oh, is that a mackerel? Playing a little bit on the inshore side there. Good looking fish. Haven't seen a whole lot of those caught.
What do we got here?
Nice. Yeah, I'm not terribly sure.
King of the beach tournament.
Sportsman Magazine. That's a Florida Redfish series.
Nice. My eyes are too blind to read it.
Yeah, the championship coming up soon.
Very soon. Good looking redfish playing up against the mangroves there.
Captain G. Miller's client there.
Captain Gene himself there with a beautiful redfish. Playing on the dark side there. Good shadowed red. It was Captain Jacob, if I'm not mistaken, ended up with a mess of fish that day. One big keeper snook, 4 good reds, and a good handful of speckled sea trout. They played it very well out there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that snook got sent home with me. Thank you. Good looking red. Playing on the kayaks out there. Getting into some good backcountry redfish. Good. Very nice. That's a light colored one. Must have been playing in some clean waters.
Is it
A little bit of, yeah, Janot out there doing a little duck hunting.
Elizabeth?
Little steel shot. That's Jessica. Very nice.
Trifecta.
Yeah, a couple of nice reds and a good sized sheep there. Good catch. Very nice.
Looks like old Joe First there.
Is that Joe First?
I think that's Joe First.
Very nice, Joe. I didn't know he actually could catch fish.
Yeah, they
Proud
went
of
to
him.
Yankee Town and
Looks different with fish in his hands.
Yeah, I didn't recognize him. Good doormat. Oh my goodness. Big old ugly black drum there. Nice catch. I bet that took a minute. Very nice red. Big old trout. Very nice. Good job, Matt.
that's coming right off of some sort of surgery he just had recently.
Yeah, I heard he
shoulder.
got some shoulder issues.
Yep.
Glad to see you out there still fishing, Matt.
Rick Largell.
Very nice, Mr. Largell. Good looking red. Miss Laura wins a lot. Glad to see y'all out there doing some good fishing. There's that trout, or no, those both reds. Very nice.
Ozzy.
Yeah, playing a little further south of here. Yeah, holy smokes, Ozzy. That was a good overslot catch there. Very nice. Another big old red. Very nice, Scott. Very nice. Mr. Pritchard. Little duo action.
Captain Travis Roberts
Very
with a
nice.
pair of
Captain
nice
Travis
red
Roberts.
fish.
Putting them on it.
I tell you, man, he does wonders in that canoe.
He does. He gets back there when nobody else gets to play.
That's it. That's one of Travis's others. So,
Good job. Good job.
all right, Billy,
Love to see it.
what do you say we go ahead and get into the first commercial, and then when we come back, let's talk with Captain Dylan Hubbard and have him.
Excited.
I'm really excited for his opinion on this.
Absolutely. We'll be right back. Hey Gary, what you doing?
Oh, just going through the book, looking at some dash panels.
As nice as that sounds, what if we went and did something a little more custom? Do you know anybody that might be able to make a switch panel like this?
Let's go talk to Brian.
I think Brian would be a good idea for that.
Oh, let's go.
It'd be sweet.
Oh, Brian. Hey, man.
What's up, brother?
I got a cardboard cutout. Can you make it into something for me?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right. What?
This is our dash panel complete. Just wanted to throw a huge shout out to Brian up there at Extreme Decalz. Nailed it. This is exactly what I had envisioned when I drew literally a cardboard cutout for this to become a true dash piece and showpiece at the same time. Thank you very much, Brian. I'm super stoked to see this thing on the water.
All right, so you guys just saw the catch of the week. A lot of good catches this week, huh?
Absolutely. Thanks. I want to go do some fishing.
Seriously. We're starting to get that better weather coming back, so
Yeah.
hopefully these winds lay down a little bit, but coming out of the east, it's not so bad.
Not terrible. Not terrible. At least on the inshore side of life.
So Billy, let's get into, what everyone's here for. Let's be
Oh, yeah.
honest. We have a very special guest that's going to be with us tonight. This special guest actually helped us with a lot of information last year coming into this new grouper season changes
Laws and regulations. Yeah, absolutely.
he filled in a lot of blanks for us, helped us understand, a lot of the science behind it, and all around great person, one of the most respected captains out there and business owners on the water.
Absolutely is.
So without further ado, we've got Captain Dylan Hubbard from Hubbards Marina joining us right here on Fish Talk Live. There he is.
What's happening, Dylan?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Dude, thank you for being here. Seriously, that last time you were on the show, one of our best episodes yet, just because of the information and knowledge that you shared with us.
It was mind blowing. It was awesome to be able to listen on them.
I was gonna say you weren't here for that, but you watched it.
I watched every bit of it. It was pretty cool.
Billy literally texted me after that and was like, "Dude, that was one of the best episodes ever. I'm sorry I missed that one." So Dylan, when we heard what we thought were social media rumors,
wishing
about this early gag season closure, earlier than early, you were the first person that I contacted because you're always in the ends because you travel around, you sit on a lot of different boards and committees. What are some of those boards that you're on, just so everyone kind of knows where you're able to get this information besides just research?
So myself, I'm the owner-operator of Hubbards Marina down in Central West Florida. We're out in Madeira Beach, so a little south of you guys, but not too far. And I serve as the president of the Florida Guides Association, and I serve on the board of the Charter Fishermen's Association, which is a Gulf-wide group of federally permitted for-hire operators. And then I also serve on a board for the Marine Recreational Education Program. I'm the program principal for the Southeast region, and I also sit on the National Marine Recreational Education Program board. And then I am blessed to be able to serve on 3 advisory panels for the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council. I sit on the Data Collection Advisory Panel, and I now chair the Reef Fish Advisory Panel. And then I also chair the Outreach and Education Technical Committee for the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council. And it enables me to meet a lot of people, get involved, and really have the opportunity to learn more myself. And I think being a family-owned and operated multi-generational business that makes a living on our resource, I think it's my responsibility, and I kind of picture it my responsibility to give back to that resource as best I can by being involved. And someone captured it really well on social media recently. They said, well, that sounds shady. It's the federal government. I don't trust the behind-the-scenes inner workings. And that perfectly captured the reason I'm here today, and the reason I'm so involved is because rewind 2015, 16, getting involved in management and really stepping up in a big way in the family business. I felt that way about the fisheries management, the fisheries science, and I had my tinfoil hat on pretty tight. And I showed up to the meetings angry and upset and confused and frustrated, and really, really, really dug in deep and dove deep. And now am blessed to be pretty well ingrained in how it all works. And because I'm able to understand how it all works, then it enables me to be more effective, efficient, and try to affect change a little bit more. And it's not as scary and perverse as some of the headlines might make you think it is. There's a lot of problems. The system's not perfect. It could be severely improved, and I think everybody's working towards those goals. It's just painstakingly slow, obnoxiously slow, and that's the challenge that we face right now. We're kind of hitting our head against the wall in a couple species, but there are good news. I mean, look at, for example, lane snapper. We're catching more of them. They're bigger than we've ever seen. Look at vermilion snapper, same thing. We're seeing more of them, bigger than we've ever seen. Yellowtail snapper, mutton snapper, red snapper. There's a lot of success stories going on right now in our region with fisheries improving. There's some big issues, though. I mean, Gag Grouper closing early is a huge problem. This Gag Grouper thing is just absolutely asinine. And amberjack. Amberjack's a big problem that continues to seem to swirl the toilet. So there's a lot of big things that I'm working hard to try to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. So So this all stemmed. It was over the weekend. One person's Facebook post and had countless shares, and that's where I saw it too. And at first, your first thought on it is,
BS.
oh, it's BS. Oh, it's just somebody trying to make commotion. But it's true. And you're the one that sent me this document that was official from NOAA. That laid it all out, that Gag Grouper season's going to close at 12:01 a.m. on October 19th. Did it catch you off guard, Dylan? Or
Huge.
Really?
Totally floored me. The person who posted it, normally I would see something like that and just dismiss it, because I am blessed to be involved in the process and blessed to have the ability to take time off of work and go to these meetings. And part of the meetings, I call it networking with serious implications. That's essentially what these Gulf Council meetings are, is you meeting people, getting to know people, and the implications are extremely serious. But you are on the inside, right? So when things like this are going to break, you don't necessarily get advance notice, but a lot of times you can kind of get an inkling and you kind of have an idea things are coming. So for this to just totally come out of the blue was a huge surprise. And when I saw that Facebook post, I was like, or actually someone sent me a screenshot of it first. And I was like, oh, they're wrong. There's no way. And then I saw who posted it. And that gave it a lot of credibility, because they actually sit on the Gulf Council. They're a Gulf Council member themselves. And that made me a little bit nervous. So then I started making some phone calls. I called Allison Garrett. I called Sean Meehan. I called multiple people at NOAA. I called multiple people at the Gulf Council, Emily Muhlstein, the public information officer. I called a lot of council staff, NOAA staff, and no one knew about this. This took everybody surprised.
Wow.
And it caused a stir Friday afternoon trying to figure out what's going on. And I was hopeful. The first couple of phone calls that I got, I was like, I don't know if this is true. It seems like it's not true, because there was a conversation about gags closing in the South Atlantic. So I thought maybe perhaps they had gotten bad information and had posted a little prematurely, and maybe it was wrong. But turns out it was right. And the federal government does not like information to leak out like this. It's supposed to be lawfully published in the public register first. So that public register document that I sent you that you have, it's really, really arduous, like kind of hard to understand. It's really written in a weird way. That's just like really weird federal law. Essentially, that comes out always a little bit before a public bulletin, a fisheries bulletin. The fisheries bulletin is the email we all get that kind of lays it out. Here's why. And it's kind of a little bit more straightforward English. So normally most people would see the fisheries bulletin. They post that to Facebook, and that's how we kind of all find out. But it's always pushed out in the public register first. So nerds like myself, who read the public register all the time, you can kind of get advanced information that way. But I'm looking at the public register, I'm making phone calls, it's not posted anywhere. So I'm like, maybe this whole gag closure thing is wrong. But that public register notice came out at like 7:15 p.m. that night. And it was clear to me that information had gotten posted, started the rumor mill, and someone had to stay late that afternoon and post that to the public register. They were trying to make the announcement Monday because they wanted it to be the first of the week. They didn't want to make that announcement on a Friday afternoon and have everybody freaking out all weekend when they couldn't contact someone at NOAA. So the intent was to let everybody know publicly Monday, but it kind of sprinkled out early and caused a lot of rumors to spread and a lot of misinformation and just frustrations to build. So it wasn't a good situation.
No, definitely not.
Bad news that was mishandled even worse.
In your gut feeling, and from your knowledge and talking to people from NOAA, what prompted this? How did this come about? Why? That's
just
kind
out of the blue of what it was. I mean,
we're seeing some of the best grouper fishing that we've ever seen in our area.
Terrible days here weather-wise, producing limits.
I mean, it's been great. So what prompted this?
So I don't think we have time to really dig into a full breadth answer to that. But essentially, let me boil it down to as quick of an answer as possible. Essentially, Gag Grouper, in my opinion, are healthier than the stock assessment says. The most recent stock assessment happened with a terminal year of 2019, which is not great. So that means the last year of data input into that stock assessment model was from 2019. So they're currently managing the fishery based on 2019 information, which seems really wrong, right? It's really frustrating, right?
Very much so.
Yeah. So I think the population's a lot healthier than that stock assessment is portraying. And I think everybody agrees to that. Now, what they've done to try to quelch that issue of science and management lagging so far behind what we're seeing on the water is the council has demanded these interim analysis or IAs to be completed. And essentially those happen each year and the SSC looks at them and it's basically a snippet, a snapshot, looking at a very minute number of data sets and kind of like a light stock assessment to give an idea to scientists where the fishery is at. And then they relay that to managers. And the idea is the managers are trying to update the catch levels to be more consistent with what we see on the water. And the IAs, the intent behind them is to try to stop that lag between what we see in science and management, a terminal year of 2019 and our stock assessment causing management changes in 2023, but the most recent IA is not that positive. We went over the IA results in our Refish advisory panel meeting yesterday. And actually the indices have shown really great recruitment and a big, huge pulse into the fishery in 2019. And that means 2023, 4 years later, those fish at 4 years old enter the fishery. So we're selecting that big year class that pulsed the fishery in 2019. So we're seeing a lot of keeper fish 22 to 34 inches. And a lot of those are tied to that big pulse in 2019. The problem that we have with Gag Grouper is their life cycle is very tied to the estuaries. So they go out in deep water, they spawn. When they spawn, those year zero, those little small phytoplankton-sized Gag Grouper get pushed into the estuary and then grow up as baby Gag Grouper in our seagrass beds. Seagrass is hugely important to those baby Gag Groupers. And then at a certain size, 10, 15 inches, they swim near shore, then they swim offshore, and then eventually they do their spawn in deeper water. And then they continue that life cycle, right? So being so tied to those not freshwater, but shallow water grass flats, they're very susceptible to water quality events. 2005, we had a major red tide event, and you can see a marked decline in Gag Grouper stock. 2013-14, we had a big red tide event. You can see a marked decline in the Gag Grouper stock. And essentially, you can follow a path of big red tide, big decline in gags. Big red tide, big decline in gags. So we had this huge bust of Gag Grouper in 2019, followed by what happened? Piney Point and another big red tide event. So we have these really big red tide events that are affecting these juvenile gag populations, and it's affecting recruitment into the adult gag sizes. So we don't have so much a problem in shallow waters in the younger kind of young adult to teenage to even young adult Gag Grouper. Where we have the problem with Gag Grouper is large adult males. Historic population ratios of sex is around 20 to 30% male. Right now, currently, most recent research project observed only 2% of the population to be male. So there's a huge reproductivity question is the stock reproductive enough to sustain itself? Because if you need a certain amount of male gags to fertilize all the eggs, if you only have 2% male instead of 20 or 30% male, is that enough to fertilize enough eggs? So the reproductivity question is a huge problem. Water quality is a huge problem. And besides that, we've seen these big boom busts in the Gag Grouper fishery where we get really good recruitment followed by a big pulse in numbers of fish. But the most recent really big recruitment was followed by red tide, which kind of stopped the big pulse of biomass. So we're not seeing positive trends in abundance like we historically have seen with Gag Grouper. So the fishery was depressed, and then we had a nice little boom of recruitment, but it didn't follow through with a big boom in adult fish. Hopefully, the next interim analysis will capture a big bust in adult fish, and maybe that'll help us to increase catch levels.
Gotcha. Okay.
Quota is really small because the fishery, according to the stock assessment, is overfished and undergoing overfishing. So our quotas got really, really restricted. The commercial fleet got cut by 80%. The recreational fleet's access got cut by 60%. So, and allocation got moved away from commercial to recreational. So the recreational got as big of a bump as possible to try to allow the most access possible. But we saw the quota is just too small. And unfortunately, what caused the piece of paper that you're holding to have happened is essentially a lot of people are pissed off, and I am too. Yeah. How can they close a fishery based on a month's catch data? And people asked me before the season started, is there a chance it's going to close early? I told them, no way. Can't close early because they can't monitor. Yeah, they can't monitor fisheries in season like that. The way our fishery is set up and the way our MRIP, recreational data collection, MRIP is the Marine Recreational Information Program. The way it works is on 2-month waves. So, and it takes a while. So for example, right now, only wave 3 data is available through the end of June. Wave 4 is July and August. We're waiting for wave 4 data right now, and we still don't have it. It's almost mid-October. It takes 50 to 60 days for that data to become available. So if the season opened up September 1st, that's the first month of a wave. That means that information, that wave 5 data shouldn't be available till like January. So in my head, I'm like, there's no way they can close the season early because they won't have recreational information fast enough to close the season down. We might overrun the quota, which would really suck because that means we don't have a season in 2025, but at least we'll have a full season in 2020 or no season in 2024, but at least we'll have a full season in 2023. But what turns out to have happened and what caused the piece of paper in your hand to have been printed is they used recreational effort data compression is what I found out most recently. And essentially what that means is it's a fancy estimation of what they think has been caught based on compression and effort shifts from a shortened season. So they take what was caught June 1st through August or October 19th in previous years, and then compress that data into a shorter season, essentially with the estimation or idea that with a shortened season means less supply, demand increases, just simple economics, socioeconomics. So when a highly sought after species has a shortened season, the assumption is people go fishing more frequently, more often, and they fish harder while that season is open for a short amount of time. So a lot of assumptions and guesses, essentially educated guesses occurred, and they are assuming that by October 19th, we will have met the quota. That's infuriating to hear that it's essentially a guess, but that's what we're left with when we have these recreational fisheries that don't have real-time data collection. And it's really hard to get real-time data collection. They have in the commercial fleet, but that's because they hail out prior to leaving the dock. They have a 3-hour landing notification. They have to tell the feds where they're going 3 hours ahead of time. They have to land the fish and have a landing notification, a trip ticket, a seafood dealer ticket. They have to have a vessel monitoring system permanently affixed to the vessel. It's a huge, huge over-regulation, super burdensome regulation. And like every ounce is accounted for. And that's why they have real-time management. That's why a commercial fisherman can go on a website and see exactly what percentage of the quota is left, because they have real-time electronic reporting that is very up to the minute. Whereas the recreational fleet, we have a bunch of surveys and a bunch of guesstimates, essentially, that manages our fishery. So it creates problems like this, and no one likes it. And I think there's a lot of effort going on right now to try to get to some of these issues by trying to improve recreational data collection. And I think that's the big thing we need to work for.
I agree.
Absolutely.
So right before you came on during our last commercial break, Billy had a really good question that he asked me, and I said, save it for Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, being a business owner and a fishing guide yourself, with the actions that they're taking on this early closure, you know, in your personal opinion, what do you think as far as other options could have been taken for the seasons versus just immediately closing it? I mean, is there something in your head that may work better as far as a regulation on the seasons?
Like limits?
Yeah, on your limits, you know, instead of 2 per person, 1 per person, lengthening the season so it's not such a high demand. I mean,
logic would dictate yes, right? All right, cut our bag limit by 50%. That'll give us a 50% longer season, right? That's what a lot of people think, and that is a common question, and it is so far from the truth, especially from Gag Grouper's perspective. You can cut the bag limit to 1 fish and it does absolutely nothing. It gives you maybe a day or 2 more season. So you give up 50% of your bag limit and you get limited, like maybe 8% more access, if that. And the reason why is the average Gag Grouper trip has an average catch of about 1 gag per person. If we were going out there, and I mean, not everybody fishes out of Ozello Keys Marina where you catch limits of gags every trip. All right, guys. So some of us don't live in the grouper capital of the world where you can catch gags in 6 foot of water off the rock, right? So some of us have to travel far. We travel 60, 70, 80 miles sometimes for our Gag Grouper. So those trips don't always see limits of gags. And because of the average being about 1 gag per angler on most angler trips, that means if you cut the bag limit to 1, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't improve access or lengthen the season. The season projections are literally like 2 or 3 days longer season if you cut the bag limit by 1. And my big issue is even if it gave you 10 extra days, it's not worth it, because what happens when you give up a fish, when you give up your bag limits, it doesn't often come back. Most of the time, I mean, we've seen it with gags. When I started fishing, gags were like 8 per person. Then it went to 5. Then it went to 3. Then it went to 2. If we give up that second gag, I don't see it coming back anytime soon.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's not worth it. If you only get a day or 2 extra season, it's not worth it. Now, vessel limits. A lot of people are like, well, let's throw on a vessel limit, and from a party boat perspective, not really super fair. But if you want to just totally throw that out, let's pretend everybody fishes off a 6-pack boat and take businesses like mine totally out of the equation. If you go to a 4-fish vessel limit, so you're only allowed 4 fish now per vessel, you get about 12 extra days. That's it. Because again, the average angler trip on a vessel doesn't have that many gags being landed. It only really starts to get beneficial if you go to 2 gags per vessel. You guys want to talk about a 2 vessel limit for gags?
No,
No,
not really.
absolutely not.
And even at that, some people might be like, well, I go out by myself, I don't care. A 2 vessel limit per gag really only gets you another 15 or 20 days. Like it's not a huge marked increase. It's not double the season length. So these vessel limits and size and bag limit changes don't do what we want them to do. They don't lower discards. They don't protect the male gags. They don't enable the fishery to rebound as we want. We want to restrict fishing mortality. And really, the unfortunate part is the more I look at it, the one thing that sticks out, all right, we want to protect male gags. Male gags are generally deeper than about 120 to 130 foot. So you could do just a closure and you're not allowed to fish beyond 120 foot of water. That protects the male gags, but that's total crap too. We don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So there's not really, really good ways to go about it right now. And that's what's being wrestled with at the council. That's what the FWC is going to talk about this week. And one more thing on the FWC is this was a NOAA announcement. NOAA monitors the quota. The Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council is an advisory board to NOAA. The Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council had nothing to do with this. They were as surprised as you and I were. They're an advisory panel to NOAA. NOAA is required to monitor the quota and make emergency closures. So your next guest is the one responsible for making emergency closures. It's his responsibility to make sure quotas, fish are not overfished by federal law, by Magnuson-Stevens Act. That's his whole job. And he does a great job at it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But FWC is a state management body. So a lot of people have been asking, or a lot of people have been throwing shade at FWC over this whole thing, when in reality, they have nothing to do with it. The FWC manage state waters. So a lot of people are like, well, are state waters still open? Technically, state waters are still open through November 10th at this time. You're watching this video. They're open through November 10th. State waters don't close October 19th at 12:01 a.m. However, come Wednesday in Jensen Beach, Florida, the FWC is going to have a commission meeting, and they are going to discuss matching federal regulations, because if they don't, we're going to be screwed. Because fast forward to 2024, or I shouldn't say we're going to be screwed. I should say we're likely going to be screwed.
Yeah.
Because what would really be bad is if we meet or exceed the quota for this year in 2023. There's accountability measures. According to MSA and the reauthorization that occurred in 2014, there has to be mandatory accountability measures. And that accountability measure for gags has a payback. Meaning if your quota is 100 pounds, we're going to say 100 pounds because I'm bad at math. If the quota is 100 pounds and we catch 200 pounds, that means we overran the quota by double, essentially overfishing by 100 pounds. So the next year, instead of the quota being 100 pounds, quota is 0. Because you have to pay back 100 pounds you overcaught the previous year.
You already hit
so
last year's quota.
Gotcha.
Exactly. So if it stays open in state waters and we catch a bunch of fish in state waters between October 19th and November 10th, then the potential of overrunning the quota is exponentially more high. Because in Tampa Bay, we're catching a bunch of them. The Skyway catches a bunch of them. You guys catch a bunch of them in state waters up there on those rocks. So the potential for overrunning the Gag Grouper with state season remaining open is super high. And then on top of that, you run into the problem, all right, now in 2024, we don't have a Gag Grouper season, or we have a super even smaller quota. Then you're going to run into what we see in the South Atlantic, where you have this super small quota, and while you're out there fishing for red snapper and other fish, you're catching gags and releasing them. Well, there's a certain percentage of those gags that have discard mortality. That discard mortality is enough that it's going to actually, just discarding fish is going to be enough to close down the quota and fill the quota. And then we're going to overrun the quota with discards. And then you get into that feedback loop that they see in the South Atlantic, where red snapper season never opens, and just discarding fish alone causes the quota to be full. And they're literally calling for, over there, a bottom fishing season, meaning you're not allowed to fish for snapper or anything at all during that closed season. That's literally been on the table as a discussion topic because of those discards and that super small depressed quota. So I want to avoid that. And it sucks that our Gag Grouper season is closing early. And next year, if we meet this quota, like perfectly, like they find out October 19th was a good closing date, we just barely met the quota or just stay under it, guess what? Next year, we're going to have the same season, September 1st through October 19th. And it's going to really stink, and it's going to really burn. It's going to really be bad for business and be bad for the access to recreational anglers. But the positive side is we're preventing that feedback loop, right? So I hope they were way off. And if we come to find out that they closed the season way too early and we only caught 20% of the quota, that means next year we're going to have a nice long season, and we're not going to be running into accountability measures. So
fingers crossed on that situation.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we have Andy Strelcheck from NOAA Fisheries. He's the Southeast Regional Administrator. And, we're big on communication. We talked about that in the beginning of this, So we're very appreciative that he's coming on the show. We have a lot of questions. Our viewers have a lot of questions they've already asked. But I want to know Captain Dylan Hubbard's question for Andy. What is the number one question that you've got for him?
My number one question is, why do we have an early season closure based on last year's data? If you had last year's data and we had a season that was set by Southeast Regional Office, why was it closed early based on last year's data? We had the data. We could have done the math ahead of time. We could have prevented an early season closure, saved a lot of credibility for the process. We could have saved a lot of headache for business owners. We could have saved a lot of people canceled vacations and a lot of heartache and stress for folks like us. So why?
All right, that's going to be the first question we ask them. So make sure you're
100%.
watching still, Dylan. And then I've got one more question for you, actually, and this is all science to the side. We're talking business. So, as fishing guides, a lot of people see fishing guides that it's the best job in the world, but at the end of the day, a business is a business. You get thrown obstacles every single day, whether you have real estate attached to it or you're just launching out of a community dock somewhere. So what are some of the things that you're doing at Hubbards Marina to kind of combat, calling clients, hey, you've pre-booked, you've got your flights booked, but we can't harvest Gag Grouper. What's some of the stuff that you guys are doing there to try to keep those clients on board to where you can still make an honest living?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, we used to be a little bit more solemn about it, and like a season changed and we're like, oh, this stinks, we got to cancel trips. Now, unfortunately, I think we've become a little bit more flexible and a little bit more like, hey, this happens. It happens a lot. We're kind of more used to it. And so are our clients and our guests. And we're blessed to have the option of what we're doing right here. Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives, TikTok. I mean, we use our social media to over-communicate with our guests and our fishing family. So when things like this happen, we get the word out as quickly as possible. And then we try to bend over backwards by adding trips, by trying to maximize the amount of availability for them to capitalize on the fishery before it closes. And then once it closes, we effort shift. That's what everybody does. So once the season closes, we're going to put together some bad to the bone mangrove snapper, yellowtail snapper, scant grouper, mutton snapper, hunting trips where we get a bunch of millions, almacos, porgies, and just have a lot of fun targeting all the other great eating fish that are going to be open, and just try to stay positive and stay focused on the fact that January 1st, Gag Grouper opens, and we got a lot of great fish to be had. Plus, now there's going to be less people on the boat. You're going to have more one-on-one time with our captains and crew, and try to be as positive as possible and just think on the bright side. If you think everybody is wrong and you think I'm totally full of crap and you think the fishery is super healthy and why are they doing this, then look on the bright side. We're over-regulating, over-managing a fishery that's healthier than everybody's saying, and that fishery is only going to get healthier, right? Like, look at red snapper. I mean, we got down to a 3-day, 6-day, 9-day, and then it slowly grew, and everybody's like, these fish are everywhere. We need a longer season. What happened? The fishery just got healthier because it was over-regulated. So there's a bright side.
There's always a bright side.
Not wrong
There's plenty of fish in the sea. So Dylan, thank you so much, man. Love having you on the show. The next time, let's do it in studio. Now, you've got your shows of your own. How do people tune into those? Where can they find those?
Yeah, we have a radio show every Saturday morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. We stream it live to our Facebook page. We do our Sunday night stream show every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. live on our Facebook and YouTube channel. We have the Friday morning news segment. We do daily little videos in the morning as well. But if you're interested in some of this science and management stuff, I'm doing it a little bit differently. I'm kind of funneling that through the Capt Dylan Hubbard brand Facebook page. So if you want to follow Capt Dylan Hubbard on Facebook and Instagram, that's where the fisheries management and kind of the fisheries politics stuff is going to go. Whereas Hubbards Marina is more like fishing reports and kind of just happy-go-lucky stuff.
Nice. Good deal.
Nice.
And the last thing I'm going to close with, I said something similar the last time. Capt Dylan Hubbard, Florida Governor 2026, we're voting for you.
The fishing governor.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. No, seriously, it was a pleasure. Billy and I are going to get that trip booked with you guys. We want to go do some of those snapper stuff.
100%.
That's where you guys are blessed. You got some incredible snapper fishing in your area. So, what was that one trip? It was like a 72-hour trip, or what was the big trip? 72 hour, right?
63-hour trip.
63
hours.
Go camping on the
We
boat.
used to do those deep dropping for snowies and yellow edge and queens and stuff like that, and that should be a next video because
Yes.
not so great out there.
Oh man, I'm excited. Dylan, thank you again. Really appreciate everything that you do for the fishing community. And we'll see you soon, my friend.
See you guys. Thank you.
See ya. Thank
Tell
you.
Andy I said hello.
Will do, man. Absolutely. Awesome. Dude,
Awesome.
that guy, he's incredible.
Yeah.
He really is.
Yeah, I mean, he's an encyclopedia of fish regulations.
That's it.
You have a question, he's got it.
But Billy, we're getting short on time,
Yep.
and we want to make sure this next guest gets as much questions answered as possible.
Absolutely.
So let's hit a commercial. When we come
be
back,
right back.
Andy Strelcheck, he is the NOAA Fisheries Southeast Regional Administrator. And guys, let's hear it straight from NOAA. We have your questions, we have our questions, and we've got Dylan's questions. So
We want to hear them all.
We'll be right back.
I don't know Jake from State Farm.
But just imagine my homes and my auto.
Best bundle in the league, baby.
Man, why can't Patrick change his name? It could be Kelsey, and Kelsey, how much you can save by bundling home and auto. Yeah? Can you make the letters smaller?
Oh, auto, let's go. Come on, model, let's get it. Put your jersey on.
Bundling. Just another way to save with the personal price plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
That was awesome.
Anytime Dylan Hubbard, speaks, it's like mind-blowing.
There's a lot to absorb when he speaks for the fact that the amount of information he retains from sitting on the board of so many commission meetings there.
Yeah.
It's
Dylan,
thank you very much for all the information.
seriously, thank you very much. I think that's a great lead into Andy Strelcheck being on the show and answering, a lot of Dylan's concerns, a lot of, our concerns, the fish,
Y'all's concerns.
everyone's concerns and questions. So, before we go over to the State Farm casting couch, I want to give you all, my opinion on this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, coming off Hurricane Idalia, I decided to block off, 1 month, and I rescheduled for grouper charters. Favorite time of the year. This is something I'm very passionate about, love doing. It's always a thrill. Day by day, it is a thrill. I was really depending on that last...
The rest of the season?
Yeah.
Until November 10th?
That last 1 month and 10 days for income reasons. Now, it's not quite over, for us. We still have to get through FWC.
That's it. I mean, there's fingers crossed that we can keep our state waters, but there's no promises that FWC will not follow the federal laws on that one.
Yep. So, I've got a gut feeling calling clients that's post-October 18th. I've got a gut feeling, that it's not going to be a make or break.
It's not the end of the world. I mean, I know you made quite a few phone calls, overheard quite a few of them, and I mean, catch and release is always a fun aspect of it.
Yeah.
Making the best of what the situation is.
That's what we can do. And, at the end of the day, to go fishing is to go fishing. Mm-hmm. It's not to fill our freezers. It's not to fill our refrigerators. We really have to think about, the next generation. We have to think about next year. Yeah. So, my gut feeling on this is people like Andy, NOAA, these federal agencies, and then going into FWC, the state agencies, this is what they are paid to do. Mm-hmm. They're not paid to screw us over. I'm going to stop everyone's comment right now that is saying, they're getting paid off, they're doing all this. Those are opinions. There's no facts to any of that. Yeah. All right, these people are not out there to get us. This is what they get paid to do. Whether or not their data is correct, I'm not saying that.
I can't count either, so it happens.
Yep, but somebody has to make these decisions, guys. But we have the opportunity tonight to ask a lot of questions. Now, a lot of y'all's questions before the show, pretty much everyone was asking the same separate set of questions.
Yep, same question, different wording.
Same question, different wording. But I want you all to really think about what is fishing. It's making memories. It's not about filling freezers. So even if it's catch and release or going to do something different, I think we can overcome this. And, that's why I look up to people like Dylan Hubbard that, there's always a bright side.
Yep, absolutely. There's always other species to fish for.
There is, absolutely. So, Brian, are we ready? All right, if Andy, if you are signed in, let's go ahead and start getting some of these questions out of the way. So we're going to introduce Captain Marrio over on the State Farm casting couch to introduce the man, the myth, the legend behind, partly behind this decision and with NOAA. So we've got
closest thing we're going to get to it.
Yeah, Andy Strelcheck with NOAA Fisheries. You out there, sir?
I can't hear him. Andy, can you hear us?
Andy?
Almost.
He's getting there. Hello, Andy.
Andy, you there?
This isn't good.
That's like cold feet happens.
All right. Let's see what the dilemma is real quick. Might be some technical difficulties.
Well, his camera's not on.
So, Andy, if you can hear us.
There's Andy.
There's Andy. Andy, can you hear us, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to
make you a spot here, Gary.
Kick the Great Dane. There we go. All right.
Co-pilot today.
So, Andy Strelcheck, thank you first and foremost for coming on the show. We understand the importance of your position and the decisions that you make, and your whole team and the advisory boards. If you got to watch Dylan's part, I feel like he had a lot of great concerns. He had a lot of great feedback, and he had a great question at the very end. So we want to give NOAA the opportunity to give us the opportunity to get some of our questions answered. So if you don't mind, we'd like to start with, how long have you been with NOAA? What's your title? What do you do?
Yeah, well, so first, thank you for inviting us on the show tonight. And I did listen to Dylan's talk earlier, and he did such a fantastic job. We worked closely with Dylan, and he really shared a lot of great information, so I'm glad you had him on the show before me. My name's Andy Strelcheck. I am the Regional Administrator for NOAA Fisheries Southeast Regional Office. I've been with NOAA for approximately 20 years. I've been in this position for a little over 2 years. My job is essentially I'm responsible for managing sustainable fisheries in federal waters of the Gulf of Mexico, South Atlantic Ocean, and U.S. Caribbean, as well as protecting endangered species and essential fish habitats. So we have a broad mission, lots of people that work here in the region. We're headquartered here in St. Petersburg, Florida, have a staff of about 140 employees.
Wow. So 20 years you've been doing this. I'm sure you didn't start out, making these types of decisions, so you've probably seen a lot. So, Andy, let's, I think Dylan's question at the very end of his segment is pretty much the main question. So why the early season closure based on last season's data is pretty much the summary of his question. Can you help us explain or help us understand that?
Yeah, definitely a great question. And first, I want to lead in with there's a lot of frustration, obviously, with just setting the season September 1 to November 10th. And Dylan got into the reasons for that. We had a stock assessment that indicated the gag population is undergoing overfishing. So we're removing fish at too fast a rate, and it's depleted. It's really at about 10% of where we want the population in terms of biomass. And so the Fishery Management Council recommended to NOAA Fisheries that we implement interim measures, and the interim measures included that September 1 to November 10th season. After we received that information, we have to obviously do rulemaking. We are evaluating any new information that's coming available. We are looking at landings data, not only for last year, prior years, looking at trends. We're also gathering data and information from this season, what is available. We don't necessarily have landings estimates, but we were gathering information from port agents and logbooks to determine whether or not catch rates were up, if people were landing more Gag Grouper. And we put all that information together, looked at our projections, and determined based on that information that the season just couldn't go into November like we had originally planned, and that we should shorten the season by a number of weeks. One of the key aspects of that is what Dylan talked about, is that, as he pointed out, he hopes we're wrong, and that, that allows for a longer season next year. But this also helps to mitigate the potential for an overage this season, which would have to be deducted from next year's fishing season.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. The way Dylan explains it to us, he kind of puts it in a little bit more of a simplified term, and I'm glad he was there to explain it to us. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's a great point. How is one of my questions, Andy, is with the data. Do you go region by region, so Gag Grouper specifically? Do you go region by region, or do you take numbers from overall, let's say Tampa Bay for the Gulf Coast? Or, have you guys done data collection like off of Ozello, Homosassa, Crystal River areas, or do you do all up and down the state? How does that work?
Yeah, so recreational and commercial data collection is not necessarily regionally based, but we do, for recreational fisheries, have a sample sites, docks, marinas, beaches, piers, places where obviously fishing activity occurs. And based on information about how active anglers are at those fishing sites, obviously some marinas, some boat ramps are larger than others. We essentially have a sampling regime that weights or puts people at those sites based on kind of that activity level, right? So we sample up and down the coast of Florida, throughout the Gulf of Mexico. There's various different surveys that can collect the data. We have a great partnership with the state of Florida as well as other states. And so a lot of the sampling that you would see dockside, interviews that would occur at your boats, are actually being conducted by Florida Fish and Wildlife personnel that have received funding and support through the government.
Okay, so like the FWC biologists that show up to the marinas and say they're with FWC, and everyone starts running away.
Right.
But then they're like, no, we're not law enforcement. We're doing studies. So those are some of the members that are helping you all collect this data, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions that, the federal government doesn't work with the states, or there isn't this partnership and collaboration. And the reality is, in order for us to manage fisheries and collect the data and science that we need to actually do the research on these fisheries, we have to work with all of our state partners and obviously our federal employees in order to collect that data and information.
It sounds like the more participation you have in the data collection, the more accurate the data will be. Am I wrong for saying that?
No, absolutely. Data collection is a huge sore spot for recreational fisheries. Dylan talked about how we don't ideally have the data in a timely enough fashion. It comes in typically every couple of months. We've been working with the states, our state partners, to develop improved surveys. So you guys may be familiar with the Florida State Reef Fish Survey that's been implemented in recent years. Those surveys are ultimately getting certified and approved for use and starting to get integrated into our science and management. And so next year, if I talk to you next year at this time, we'll be talking about using the State Reef Fish Survey data to actually monitor landings data for the fishing season, right? So we've shifted over to some of these new improved surveys that have been worked on with the states.
Okay.
And it sounds like it's an ongoing thing where they keep improving year after year. Yeah.
Absolutely. Our goal is obviously continual improvement. Obviously, that can be a challenge because as you learn more and there's changes to data, that can provide disruptions in the data stream. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we want this data to be as accurate and as precise as we possibly can to help manage recreational anglers.
And the data, just say the data you collect this month, when would that be put into place in use for your stock assessment, basically?
So a stock assessment is typically done every 3 or 4 years. It's not done on a kind of annual basis. But what we will do is take a look at the landings that are reported during this fall season. Those will initially come available probably early next year in terms of preliminary landings, and then we'll use that information to help inform any decisions for next year's season going into the spring, summer of next year.
Okay.
All right. You know, something I like to point out too is, Mario, you and I, you know, Capt Teddy, Capt Carl, Matt, all the guides, you know, that run out of here, whenever we have a 6-person charter, that is the complaint of our day. How are we going to bait that many hooks? You know, that's the most difficult part. The difficult charters, we have a 6-person inshore charter. Imagine what NOAA, FWC, biologists have to go through with thousands,
6 million,
millions of data collection points. So, you know, for anyone that's probably posted on this feed right now, you know, that's throwing out those accusations and that sort of stuff, I really want to stop that stuff now, because I really want you to put yourself in these shoes of what it actually takes to get this stuff done, and the science and the data that's collected from this. And it sounds like it's getting better and better too.
Right, and we were saying the more people that participate in the data collection, the more accurate the data is going to be. Because a lot of times you see people, oh, this FWC wants to talk to me for 10, 15 minutes. I'm running the other way. Well, it's not a good thing, because it will be more accurate if you participate in the data collection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we often hear, you know, with closures and other regulations, right, frustration around that. I'm not going to provide you data. You're just going to use it against us, right?
Yeah.
That's the exact opposite of what we need you to do, right? We need the data and information to be provided to support, obviously, what you're seeing on the water, so that we can improve our science, improve our management. You know, our goal with Gag right now is to recover this population from a very depleted state. And, you know, my hope is in years to come, we're talking about, you know, quotas that right now are in the hundreds of thousands that are going to now be in the millions of pounds, right? And it's going to take a while to get there, because Gag just don't grow up overnight. But ultimately, that's our goal, and everyone obviously wants a good fishing experience.
That's it. So one of our guests tonight has she actually asked 5 questions, and very educated questions too. The first 2 were already answered, or actually the first one was already answered right away. But her second question was, when changing regulations, do these committees and does NOAA, you know, do they weigh in on the economic impacts within the communities, or is it strictly the fisheries themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. So with federal laws, the recommendations for rulemaking come from the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council. So that's a body of 17 members. I am one of those members. There's 5 state directors, and then there's people that are appointed to that body by the state governors. So from state of Florida, for example, you have members like Ed Walker, who you may know, and Bob Gill. They make recommendations essentially to the agency on regulations, and then we do the rulemaking and complete those rules. So when we do a rulemaking, it's a very transparent process. As Dylan said, it can be very slow, and I agree with them. It's fairly meticulous, but we ultimately have to evaluate the environmental impacts of that regulation, including the socioeconomic consequences of it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the main requirement we have under federal law is we have to prevent overfishing of our fish stocks. And so what we ultimately have to do is first prevent overfishing, and then based on that, we can make decisions with regard to the regulations as how we can minimize socioeconomic impacts associated with that. But we can't just solely take into consideration socioeconomic impacts and not consider overfishing and overfish status.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So Stacy's next question: are social media posts used as a source of data when determining changes in regulations?
No, they're not used for any sort of changes in regulations.
Okay. Does the number 4? She's got some good questions.
Good question.
Does the algorithm NOAA uses to determine the estimated total fish caught account for fish released by anglers?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to your social media question real quick. And one of my comments that I've made actually during Fishery Management Council meetings is it would be dangerous for us to use social media posts because I don't know many anglers that actually post their small fish on social media. They just post the big pictures of fish. But in all seriousness, with your last question was what again? Repeat it.
So does the algorithm that NOAA uses to determine the estimated total fish caught account for fish released by anglers? So I think she's... Oh, good.
Yeah, so the decision for the early closure in October is not based on discards of fish, right? So that's strictly landed catch that we're estimating. In terms of what we allow in terms of fish harvested as well as overall fishing mortality, when we do a stock assessment, we are looking to account for all sources of fishing mortality. So that includes landed catch, as well as those fish that you discard and some portion of them ultimately die from discard mortality.
Okay. All right. Her last question was cut off in my screenshot, and I'm trying to find it here. So let's slide over here. All right, so Mr. Jason Porter has a relevant question. That's how he started it off. We started off at a limit of 5, then a limit of 4, then 3, then 2 now. A short season, but nobody can give me an answer. What help or benefit it has done to the grouper population of the continual cutting off of our fishery? So it seems to me he's wondering going down in the fish, and Dylan kind of answered this earlier.
Yep.
So, but you know, what is actually, I think the better question, no offense, Jason, but I think the better question here, because Dylan pretty much answered this, but what is your thought on Billy's question to Dylan earlier about would it make more sense instead of cutting a season early? Would it make more sense decreasing the per person limit or adding a boat limit or doing something else instead of cutting a season limit?
Yeah, to be honest, I would turn it back on you guys. We're actually talking about this right now with the Fishery Management Council. These are some of the deliberations that the council's having with regard to, do we change the bag limit? Do we change the vessel limit? If so, what does that do in terms of changing the season length? And is that, worth the cost of reducing retention limits in order to allow for a longer season? So those are trade-offs that the council is actively considering. In terms of the comment that you received on Facebook, I do want to kind of touch upon that. And I think one of the things I will say, you heard me earlier, I've been in this business now 20 years, actually longer than that because I work for the state of Florida. And I hear often like the government always takes away fish, they never give it back. And that's true in most instances, right? And that's disappointing for me to say that. But I also tell people that we have this really massive change in the baseline as well. We have more people moving to the coast, more people fishing in boats, more people with boats that can go farther offshore, better horsepower, better fishing technology, better fishing equipment. All of that adds up to make my job, and to be honest, fishery management job very difficult, and it makes it very challenging, obviously, to set regulations. And so, we have exhausted, I think, a lot of our traditional management approaches in terms of setting seasons and bag limits and size limits. And fishery management is probably reaching a crossroads in terms of how do we manage the fishery differently? What does that look like going forward? And we have some initiatives starting up with the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council and the South Atlantic Council just to look at some innovative new management strategies that maybe we can get out of this box and some of the frustration that anglers are experiencing because of short seasons.
Gotcha. Okay. And I did find Stacy's 5th question. What is the NOAA's minimum number of surveys, interviews collected from anglers needed to develop an accurate estimate of fish caught?
Yeah, I'm not the scientist to answer that question. What I will say is that there are kind of data standards for science with regard to the accuracy and precision of some of our catch estimates, and some obviously are much better than others just based on how frequently we encounter and sample species. So for red grouper or gag, it's going to be a lot better than like a yellow edge grouper that's rarely, sampled in recreational catch just because it's less frequently caught by recreational anglers.
Gotcha. And that was one thing I forgot to add to before this segment is, when speaking earlier with Allison and NOAA, if there was any questions that Andy, that you didn't have an answer to right then, Alyssa did say that they would monitor the comments, and if it's a legitimate question, that they would come back, circle around, and answer them on this live feed too. So, besides that, I mean, everyone that I'm going through, everything we've discussed has kind of been summarized, with what we've talked about. But Mario, from what you've seen on social media, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring together, the scientists, the people that are trying to make our fishery relevant, for future generations, like Billy said, for next year. What you've seen on social media, is there anything that you might have a question for Andy that we can kind of help just shed some light? And I mean, a lot of good information's been put out tonight. Going into this, I had mixed feelings. I'll be very honest. To start it, I was angry. Yeah, truly. I mean, everyone. But, we have to conduct ourselves in a professional manner because we're professionals. We have to think about next year. We have to think about our next generation's fishery. So we can't just assume that anyone's in this for bad intentions. That they're in it for good intentions. Right. So yeah, we might lose a few bucks, here and there, but especially for us guides, like that's part of, owning a small business. But yep. Billy, what about you?
My only true question to it is, are we going to be using this year's stock assessments for regulating next year's season? Or how do you go about for regulating for what next year's seasons will end up being?
It's a good question.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So there's two factors. One will be the catch limit that's specified by the Fishery Management Council. So under a rebuilding plan, that changes from one year to the next as the stock recovers. So we'll base it off of the new catch limit. And then also we look at obviously the most relevant information with regard to catch rate. So this year's season will help us inform next year's season. We obviously won't have fishing activity occurring in 2024 outside of the September 1 opening. And so we have to rely on kind of that historical catch data and information and use that to project future seasons. It's not ideal, I recognize that, but it's really the limited information we have. I did mention earlier that we are switching to the state reef fish survey. So that does speed up the data slightly because instead of the 2-month time periods, we will have 1-month data. So we're hoping that will also help inform future seasons.
Very nice.
Perfect. Andy, the very last question that I was just thinking about is as far as public input. That was kind of something that I forget how Dylan put it earlier. A bad, what do you say? Not a bad idea, but a bad outcome with bad communication. I think he said, or something along those lines. For this, something significant like this, is there a way for the public to be aware of these communications prior to a decision? In the case of that, we can provide public input or get the questions that we're asking now answered before the decision is made.
To be a little less blindsided.
Basically.
Yeah, and Dylan spoke to kind of how it was rolled out, and certainly we could have done a better job on that. The Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council has bestowed on me the ability to actually set these seasons based on projections and information and data, right? And so I encourage people to participate in that process. Dylan mentioned his role in the advisory panel. The more you can be involved in the process, the better. It is a very transparent process, and there's a lot of ways to get involved and engaged. And even if you're not directly involved and engaged, find someone like Dylan who can represent you to engage in the process. My hope is by coming on your show like I am tonight, that you'll find that, we do have good intentions here. We're trying to do the best we can with the data and information we have. We do have difficult decisions before us, but ultimately at the end of the day, we're approachable. We're willing to communicate and talk to you guys about anything and everything. And if you have ideas about how to change management and improve it, I want to hear it, because I have a seat at the table and vote on decisions all the time. And ultimately at the end of the day, we want to improve our fisheries.
Yeah, perfectly said. And I would probably look at maybe bringing Catherine onto your team, because she had some pretty good input and questions. So, Stacy there. So, but Andy, I cannot thank you enough. I mean, I really do appreciate you coming on here and spreading the message, spreading the information, being transparent. We truly, I'm not going to speak for Mario or Billy. I'm going to speak for myself. I really do believe in you guys. I believe that you are in it for the right reasons. And, this is the second time that NOAA has replied the day of. Mm-hmm. This is a last minute. This was not planned. This was this morning. We called and, first they said, what's the name of the show? We're a small show, but you guys are here. You're answering the questions. Andy, we cannot thank you enough. Is there anything else that you would like to share, tell us? Or I think somebody asked about if you guys were going to cut the limits on pinfish, but we'll worry about that on the next episode.
All I'll say is, one, thank you. Appreciate being on the show tonight. Allison Garrett, who's my communications specialist, Sean Meehan, who's my recreational fishing coordinator. They are great points of contact, always willing to obviously talk to folks. Also want to put in a plug for the Marine Resource Education Program, and we can get you some more information on that. Please. This is a program that we invite people to. It's a small session of about 30, 40 people, but it educates people about the federal fishery management and science process. It's held in St. Petersburg. We're going to actually have a workshop coming up in November. And if we still have slots available, would encourage people to apply for it, because it is a fantastic program.
Awesome. Andy, good. Thank you again. Mario, you got anything?
Nope.
Awesome.
He covered it.
Yeah. Andy, thank you for everything. We hope to have you guys back on the show again here soon. And, keep doing what you're doing, and we really appreciate it. And if we have any questions, we'll contact you.
Thanks, guys. Anytime.
All right,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Phillips Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram in Ocala has been serving North Central Florida since 1997. Family owned and operated, Phillips' knowledgeable sales staff will help you find the right vehicle for your needs. Join the Jeep Club, tow a boat in a new truck, or feel the power of Mopar performance. Come to Phillips Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram in Ocala and get your dream ride, or visit us online at phillipscjdr.com today.
Guys, thank you again for watching. Thank you to Captain Dylan Hubbard and Andy and NOAA. Thank you all for taking the time tonight to helping us understand not all of us are very happy about this situation, but this is the light of the subject, and it was great to have these two on board to enlighten us on how this happens.
Yeah, it helped us understand it a little bit. We may not understand the whole thing, but
we may be catching piles here, but maybe 2 hours north just isn't.
End of the day, we still get to go fishing. We still have our freedom. Nobody's taking any freedom away from us. The only thing that seems like they're doing is helping next generations.
That's their attempt, and can't blame them for it.
Yep. So, is the data perfect? No. Are they trying? Absolutely. Oh, yeah. They are, and they're improving. If you guys want to get involved, look at NOAA's website, look at FWC's website. There's all the different feedback and research groups and information you can join. So just keep on fishing. There's always a bright side.
And the surveys that they're doing at the docks, participate in them. The more participation we have from the general public, the more accurate the data is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it could hurt or truly help us.
Yep. So that was a special edition of Fish Talk Live. It's not our typical episode, but next week we'll be back to the normal shenanigans that we usually pull, and we got some cool stuff on Tackle Table Talk next week. And we've actually got our friends from Bubba coming 2 shows. We've got 8 of them that's coming all the way over from Missouri. They're going to be live right here, and they're bringing all kinds of cool stuff with us.
Bubba episode.
So we will see you all next Tuesday. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to you all, most importantly. We really appreciate it. Thank you to NOAA. Thank you to Capt Dylan Hubbard. And
Absolutely.
yeah, anything else, guys?
Keep fishing and hope for the best.
Look at the bright side. We'll see you all next Tuesday.